Donc aujourd'hui, le 19 février 2019, on reçoit à l'Université du Québec à Montréal des étudiants, des spécialistes, une militante inuit pour une table ronde sur le Nord et l'Arctique en arts et sciences. Puis on va s'arrêter en milieu de journée pour présenter le film Inuktut en colère dans lequel Aaju Peter joue le rôle principal. On aura une discussion avec elle sur pourquoi faire un film, pourquoi être militant inuit aujourd'hui, pourquoi défendre la langue, pourquoi défendre la chasse aux phoques dans un même geste. Et en fin de journée, on aura une conférence d'Aaju Peter précisément sur la langue inuit.
Donc, je vous souhaite la bienvenue à cette présentation où on va vous présenter le film Angry Inuk, qui a eu un grand succès dans le monde, avec Aaju Peter, qui est l'une des, non pas des personnages du film, mais celle dont on suit le parcours à l'intérieur de tout ce film. Le film porte sur l'importance de la chasse aux phoques chez les Inuits comme quelque chose qui est lié à la culture, à la politique, à la façon de voir les choses. Et Aaju va jusqu'à l'Union européenne pour leur présenter le point de vue inuit. Vous allez voir, on essaie de convaincre l'Union européenne que la chasse n'est pas qu'un geste inhumain comme il le pose, mais que les Inuits d'abord doivent être consultés et qu'ensuite ça a des répercussions fatales dans leur société, dans leur culture, la décision qui sera prise en Europe. Et vous allez voir, moi quand j'ai vu le film, j'ai senti complètement l'absence de pouvoir qu'on parfois on peut ressentir quand les autres prennent des décisions pour nous et qu'on n'est absolument pas consulté. Et c'est un film exceptionnel. Donc c'est aussi une visite exceptionnelle d'avoir Aaju Peter. Elle est avocate, elle est militante, elle est aussi designer de mode. Et tout son travail porte sur de défendre sa culture, de défendre sa langue. Elle a aussi un parcours exceptionnel puisqu'elle est née au Groenland et elle a immigré au Nunavut. Donc elle a appris l'anglais, elle a appris l'Inuktitut une fois rendue au Nunavut, alors que sa langue maternelle est le groenlandais et le danois. Donc j'invite Aaju à venir avec nous et elle présentera pendant 10-12 minutes le film et ensuite on aura une période de discussion d'environ 15 minutes avec elle concernant le film qui dure 1h20. So, welcome Aaju.
Thank you.
How are you?
Thank you. I didn't understand a word except for Aaju, but I'm glad he said good things about me. I would like to thank the Huron and Mohawk Nation, whose unceded territory this is, for allowing us to be here and to welcoming us here today. And thank you all for coming. Somebody told me yesterday that there's 45,000 students at this university. We could place all Inuit from Nunavut in this university and we could still bring our friends. So you are very lucky. Canada is the only nation, the only Arctic nation without a university in the Arctic. And you should consider yourself very fortunate and very blessed. We are still arguing for a university in the Arctic, but what I noticed here is not only do you have a university, but you can also use your own language to study in your university, which is fantastic, as you say. We look forward to that opportunity ourselves, because education is the key. I started lobbying the Europeans after Germany banned the import of seal into Germany, and then Holland followed, and my son and I went to Holland to protest the anti-sealing campaign and to speak with parliamentarians. That didn't help because there was so much animosity, as you will see in the documentary, when people blinded by fear or by something they just don't investigate and just jump on the bandwagon that something is cruel, something is bad, without really studying it, without really finding out the facts, and without seeing how devastating the 1983 ban on white coats was for the Inuit. All the anti-sealing campaign and everything was said, well, we exempted Inuit and this is not against Inuit because they're allowed to still go hunting. But if the market in cow or pig crashed in one place, it would affect the whole anti-stealing campaigning would stop the sale of cow, the sale of pig. It would affect everybody. We would say, well, we are exempting Alberta from all this. The market doesn't work like that. It does affect everybody who are in this business. I just jumped right off, but just to tell you that English is my fourth language, I'll sing you a traditional song in my second language, which is the Inuit language. It talks about how when everything is frozen, when I just left Iqaluit a month ago, it was minus 43. Today it was minus 49 with the wind chill. When I left, I look out, and I go out from my home, it's all snow. Everything is covered in snow. And the ice is all snow. Ice and snow. We have nothing else. So our teachings go with singing, an oral tradition, and they teach us what to be aware of. And this particular song talks about if you're easily frozen, you have to look at your environment. Pay attention, because if you don't, you'll freeze to death. I was in Igloolik some years ago teaching, which is a bit further north from where I am. It was March 15, and I could take my gloves off for a second, but I couldn't even take the picture because my hands were frozen right away. So just to give you an example. Katangutikali Dagukirima Adotikutlalalerama Ay 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 ay. And as a lawyer, I won't sing you the whole song because our songs belong to our all the people. Not one person can claim the song. It's a communal ownership that we need the Canadian legal system also to understand. So I look forward to your questions. I know people were already asking me about our tattoos, and I'll leave some room for that, and we will have a nice discussion about what you will see. I cry every time. I've seen it many, many times. For me, it's very emotional. So enjoy. Thank you. If you're a girl and you say Aaju, it means older sister. If you're a boy and you say Aaju, it means older brother. So I'm Brother Peter. My last name is Peter. It was so cute. My oldest two granddaughters, Malaya would go and say Aaju all the time to her older sister, Silaki. Silaki means beautiful sunshine. And I never turned my head because I knew she was referring to her older sister. I grew up in Greenland. How many of you have been to the Arctic? Excellent. So I can speak in Inuktitut and they can translate for you. Greenland is a different area of the Arctic, and they speak the language of Greenland, Greenlandic Inuktitut. So when I moved to the Canadian Arctic in 1981, after having forgotten my own language because I went to school in Europe, I had to relearn the Inuit language, which was fantastic. As you say here, fantastic. I know Johannes, who came to Nunavut, and he was part of the celebration of the seal, showing his pictures of the Magdalene Islands, of the sealing. So we did a collaboration. I went to Magdalene Islands. I wanted to move there. I shall move there one day. Oh, fantastic place. Seals and ceiling, beautiful architecture, beautiful people. So thank you. I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm just gonna wing it. I got a law degree, so I can just wing it anytime, anywhere that I want to, and I can just talk. That's what we are trained to do. We can just talk. You're supposed to laugh at this point. Inuktut means in the evening. Inuktut. Do you study the Inuit language? Yeah. How many of you? Inuktut means in the evening. Of course, when we were living 10, 20 people, we never had to say good evening because it was obvious the sun had gone down. And we didn't have to say good day and ullakut, which means in the morning, ullukut, which means in the daytime, because it was obvious. You don't say that. I didn't study Greenlandic in school. I went to school when we all had to learn just to speak in Danish. Så når jeg snakker dansk, så ved jeg ikke, hvor mange af jer, som forstår, hvad jeg siger. Du forstår godt dansk, det er godt. Fordi det er, hvad jeg skulle lære i skolen. Det har ikke nogen som helst med mit eget sprog at gøre. One of you understands what I'm saying. It had absolutely no connection to my own language. I started school in 1967, and when I was shipped off to school in Denmark at age 11, I was taken and put in Denmark and just placed with a family. And guess what? They were a dentist couple with 3 daughters. I was 11. And I had to brush my teeth. I had never brushed my teeth in my whole life. And when people asked, okay, so what do you remember of your stay in Denmark? I said, I had to brush my teeth 3 times a day. Oh my God, that was such a big deal. And then I had to sit at a table. I had to sit at a table, like, who sits at a table? There was a plate, and there was a fork, and there was a knife, and I was supposed to eat with a fork and knife. Like, everything was so foreign. And they shipped us off. We were just 11 in July. How do you ship an Eskimo to the hot climate in July? Like you gotta melt them. You're gonna try to melt their wool out of them. That's what they tried to do. It was so hot for me. So when it would be raining, I would just be sitting in the garden, cooling off. I'm just showing you that not only was it please, there's a chair up here, right here if you wish. Please be comfortable. Tungasugit is the Inuit language for welcome, and we always try to make everybody feel welcome. Like, not only was it a linguistic, totally different language, but it was also culturally totally different. And it was like learning a new culture and a new language all at the same time. Why am I saying this? Because now I'm 4 languages and 4 cultures in all one. And that was not easy. When I took my law program, it was using my 4th language, and law itself is a totally different language. I had a really hard time raising my 5 children, being a single mother, and taking law school. Like, who would sign up for that? It's like, are you out of your mind? I was. Call it 10 years of mental, I don't know what you call it. So I moved to Canada, but because I was expecting my first child, I really wanted my children to learn the Inuit language. So I wrote up everything, every single word, ullukut, ullakut, ullumi, ipasa, kaupat, everything in the tenses. What are the names of the week? What are the colors? Just to stay ahead of my children, my first child. And as I was going, I remember I was in Inuktitut. I was helping my mother set up the women's shelter and the food bank. And she was unilingual. I remember one day sitting there breastfeeding my daughter, and I was interpreting for my mother-in-law from the English language to the Inuit language and vice versa. And I thought, when did this happen? But when you're studying a language, I believe it took me about a year just to listen to the language, because it was just like this. And then finally you could start picking up words as you were going. And then finally, without knowing, I was interpreting for my mother-in-law. And that was a miracle. That was a year into when I would be alone in the home and the phone would ring. I would answer it and I would just speak Danish. Of course, nobody understood what I was saying. And the person at the other end didn't understand what I was saying, so that was square. as far as I was concerned, it was square. I hear that the Inuit language is very difficult to learn. But for me, because I grew up in Greenland, I already had the first 11 years of learning the language and it being part of me. So when I went back when I was 18, it just didn't take that long for me to regain that memory. It's still in your memory. And then when I moved to Canada, it was the same language, just very minor differences. Inuit, and then I sailed the Northwest Passage and I went all the way to the Western Arctic, and I could still interpret for the people in the Western Arctic all the way to Greenland because it's the same language, just very few minor differences. I understand people from Labrador, people all over. Once I learned the Canadian language and once I learned the Greenlandic, you can use it. It's like a Swiss Army knife. You can use it everywhere. Yeah. Any questions? Am I talking too fast or am I just blabbing like, what's this woman talking about? How many of you have 2 languages? Most of you, I'm sure. 3 languages. Excellent. 4 languages. Excellent. So you know, once you have 1 language, 2 languages, it's quite easy to learn more because I'm told that language came from one stream. And when I go to Japan or to New Zealand or any other place, you can still pick up the language. Not so much from what is being said, but from how it's being said and in what context. Tungasugit. Can you guys say tungasugit? Tungasugit means please have a good foundation. Because in my culture, I can't believe I'm still having a plane here. I'm like in space with a hollow thing, listening to my own words, and it's very hard. I was just coming in from New York and North Carolina and Toronto, and then flying back here, and I can still feel my ear here. I think it's true that language came from one, as we came from somewhere, and you can, the more languages you learn, the more similarity you can start picking up, and especially with the Inuit languages from the Siberia, Alaska, Canada, and Greenland, I can interpret for almost everybody just by knowing 2, yeah. I'm talking too much. I would like to hear your questions. Anything except how it is to be a white person. I haven't experienced that yet, but I'm sure I can learn.
in other places in Canada. What do you think Greenland is doing right that Canada should be doing maybe to protect the language and to promote the language?
So, excellent question. When I was growing up in school in Greenland in the 60s, everybody had to learn Danish. Everything pro-Dane and pro-white was it. That was your future. You had to have a good education. And as long as you could learn Danish, then you were set for the future. But then in the 70s and 80s, Greenlandic government realized, we made a mistake. We need our language, we need our culture. Just being able to speak Danish is not enough. Our children need to be able to communicate with their parents and with society of Greenland. So what Greenland did to reverse this incredible loss at a very alarming rate, because they were sending us all off to school in Denmark, forgetting our own language. Greenland government passed a legislation that stated, language of education shall be in Greenland. No excuse. In law, it means that you have to. The difference in Nunavut right now, when the Language Education Act was passed, it states, language of education may be in the Inuit language, which means if you don't have teachers, and if you don't have the books, which we still don't have, if you don't have the curriculum in the Inuit language, then you don't need to deliver Inuktitut. That's the difference. When Greenland passed the legislation stating shall be in the Greenlandic language, then all the curriculum and all the education had to be in Greenlandic, in the Greenlandic language. I won't say that they're far ahead, or for some reason we tend to compare Greenland and Nunavut, but you have to remember, Reverend Peck, the missionary, first came to Nunavut, which we now call Nunavut, but the Inuit lands, in the late 1880s. And Hans Eger, who came to minister for all the Vikings that we ate, they had long gone in the 1550s, and he was like 200 years late. You're supposed to laugh when I say we ate them all. Of course we didn't eat them all. Like, how could we eat them? We are raw meat eaters, but we're not. White meat somehow is too dry and too tasteless.
Did you brought any seal meat?
I didn't bring any seal meat, but I'm told I can eat seal meat in Montreal, so I'm going to go hunting for seal meat tomorrow, especially seal brain, my favorite. Hans Eger came to Greenland in 1721, and compare that to 1880s, like this, a discrepancy of almost 2 centuries. So it's unequal. Like if I were to compare you two in your progress and how you have developed, if there's 200 almost years difference, then it's quite unequal. But it depends what glass you're looking at, and it depends what term you say development. Okay, according to who? Is it in the Western world that you're saying this, or is it retaining culture, retaining language, retaining shamanic practices, retaining your custom? So it really depends. And we've been not only colonized physically and in our land, but our minds have also been colonized. So we tend to think that what is good is all about white society and Western way of thinking and Western technology, everything. No. That is not how we would like to grade what is modern, what is technology, what is society, what is culture. It is grading it from an Inuit perspective. Our language, our culture, our way of being is quite different. And excuse me, we would like a space to still practice 4,500 years of culture, memory, way of thinking, way of being, which this new modern society is forgetting. I remember hearing a First Nation person saying he had walked all day in the city, and he walked into his hotel, and there was no trace of the land. There was no trace of the soil that he had walked on. Nothing. So I walked out of my hotel this morning. I couldn't see the sun rising. I couldn't see the sun setting because of all those buildings that were blocking me from having any connection, and all this concrete that was blocking me from having any connection to my environment, which was very interesting because my face is supposed to please the sun. My facial tattoos are to welcome the sun, and I love to welcome the sun when it's rising and when it's setting. But everybody was just walking like this. I try to leave that when I leave down south, because in our communities we have to recognize each person. We have to see each person. Recognizing that they're here. You don't need to say anything. You just need to recognize that each person is here. Here it's like, oh, I'm too good. I don't need anybody. There's 45,000 of us, but we're going to walk around like this. And I don't know how to connect my language with this way of being, because our language is very much on recognizing each person. And as we were talking about it yesterday, it feels like many, many days ago. It is even our mind, even the word for sila. You must have heard the word for sila. Sila is your brain, and sila is the great universe, and it connects directly to your brain, to your way of being, to how smart you are. Being smart means sila tiyok, being caring. It's not about smarts. I can tell you, as the only person out of 7 billion people, how. I kid you not, I'm the only person who can tell you the process. But it doesn't make me a wise person. It's not being about smart. A wise person is considerate, always welcoming, always sharing, never making feel anybody unwelcome, respect to the land, respect to the environment. So that's where our language comes from. Sila tuyok. I can show you this, but then I would wreck my copyright, so I'm not. But I could tell you physically what happens. Sila tuyok. Sila, your brain expanding to being wise, is where our universe comes from. Out of respect for the whole universe, out of respect to the sun. My facial tattoos welcoming the sun back on January 13, when the sun returns after being away for 2 months. And I experienced the sun returning. You look at the horizon, the dusk, and the sun comes back like a big orange, just for a few seconds out of the horizon, and it's gone. Aliyane tukapoinuni alirama ulok sulitava ya 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 ya. And we sing. after we hide all the lamps away from the sun so that not to show disrespect for the sun, we sing, I am so happy that I shall be alive again. Because when the sun is not there, we are like that. We are like in the dark. There's no flowers, there's no new birth, there's nothing, like being on the moon. So when the sun comes back, we all welcome the sun back. And the woman's facial tattoos are to welcome the sun back. It's like not being detached from who you are, where you are in this whole earth. We are just like, we are told we are just like a drop in the ocean. You know how big the ocean is? This world didn't start just when you were born. We tend to think, okay, this whole world started when I was born, and dang, I'm going to leave my mark on this world. Sorry. Even if we were all gone right now, the earth would just happily go on. Because in 5 minutes, we would all be gone. Without air, without food. So, Inuit, very smart people, surviving in the harshest environment, I believe, learned very fast to adapt to this amazing environment by showing respect to the sea goddess, showing respect to the sun. And as we were talking about earlier when we showed Angry Inuk about animal rights groups, never showing anger, even to the animal rights groups, of all the damage that was done, but keeping up the communication. Because at the end of the day, what the animal rights groups are doing and what Inuit are doing is the same thing. We would like to treat animals right. And we would like to have proper economy, the blue economy, and we would like the environment to be safe and clean. Yeah. We've tried to speak with them many times, doesn't happen. And we'll just keep trying, because at the end of the day, we are all in the same earth. Yeah. We all want to do the right thing. What surprises me is all the plastics, even if we hear all the damage plastics are doing. What are we doing? Like, we hear it, we understand it, we hear all the damage with the plastic in the ocean. Somehow it doesn't apply to me. Somehow it doesn't apply to me individually. 7 billion of us, it doesn't apply to me. But if we said, okay, it applies to me, and 7 billion of us said it applies to me, I think we would have a cleaner earth. I could just be dancing up here for the remainder of the time, but Inuit don't talk unless if they have to, but we will talk when we have to, and I would love to hear your questions, because I can just go on and, yeah.
Maybe as a little background to my question, I'm a professor at HEC Montreal. It's a business school affiliated to University of Montreal. So what I do in terms of writing and teaching is I write about enterprises and corporations, but especially their relationship with local communities and indigenous communities. So obviously a lot of negative impacts, but sometimes potentially positive impacts as well. And my question about your perspective on the is about your perspective on the use of Inuit languages, especially the syllabics, in the product marketing, product design and marketing by some companies. I'm specifically thinking about the Ungava Gin, the very controversial campaign back in 2016. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there are various companies that because this looks so cool, right, to many consumers, they just use these syllabics often just to, like often when they source ingredients from the north, they tend to use this for their product design and marketing, which I find often controversial and problematic. Maybe it's not necessarily bad if it's done more appropriately and in respectful manner, because it can maybe increase visibility to the cultures and languages if it's done appropriately. But unfortunately, it seems that it's often just a corporate initiative without really adequately involving the community. So I just, well, this is just a book, but I was just kind of illustrating that, these syllabics, like even those who don't understand anything about the languages or characters, it can just kind of look exotic, cool, etc., which give those corporations to use that as a marketing mechanism. And once again, maybe not necessarily always bad, but sometimes problematic. And I'm very curious about, whether you experienced anything like that, or whether you have a perspective on that.
There's two sides. There's two things I would like to address. I actually work for this company. It says Inuktitut Inuktitut. It's a language and cultural program that is in Inuktitut. They develop language learning. But because Reverend Peck in the early 1900s taught religion to Inuit, and he adapted the syllables that were first given to First Nations in southern Canada by writing the Bible in syllabics, then it became part of the Inuit culture. And we're slowly trying to move to Roman orthography because we think the younger generation would learn the Inuit language faster if it was in Roman and not like my name. I never had to stop writing the two syllables, which is right here. But with the Inuit syllabics, it's very, very hard to write. I'm almost. No, sorry. Like, it takes all day to try to write that. But you would have to go. And so on. So you see, it is harder to, but it's exotic. It was imposed to Inuit through an outside, because we are an oral tradition people. Like our tattoos, it's exotic. It means special things that the elders only read this and they would like to keep it. But in order for us to become north to north, and stop being south to north, because our curriculum is from Alberta, we would now start using the curriculum from Greenland, because they're so developed, curriculum from Western Arctic, from Labrador, from Alaska, not just from Alberta. And we now need to use the Roman orthography, yeah. This is great. If you know how to read this and use it, it's great. But for learning and for teaching materials, because we don't have the teaching materials in Nunavut, each teacher have to make up their own teaching materials. We're far behind in the curriculum. And for taking notes, you have to be really, really good at writing this as opposed to this. This is longer, but at least it's Roman, and you can read English, you can read German, you can read Inuktitut, Greenlandic in the same alphabet. Nalunakasuak tatiluqatigi fissarsualiorniaqaluaqamingooq aasingoq is what I wrote. I'm finding now that since we published the tattoo documentary, the reason why the documentary maker didn't give it out to the world was because he didn't want non-Inuit to start taking all these patterns and all the tattoos that we have. It's still not out, and I can understand her because the same with the syllabics. It's sexy, it's cool, it's indigenous, whatever. Yeah. Good question. Did you get what I was saying at all? Yeah? Okay.
Do the white Greenlanders learn to speak Inuktitut today in Greenland?
To the white people? Absolutely. Yeah. Because when you go to a playground in Greenland, all the Inuit and non-Inuit children are all speaking in Greenlandic, which is fantastic because it means they're retaining the language. If you go to Nunavut, if there's 9 Inuit and 1 white, they will speak English, maybe because they don't know how to speak Inuktitut, but also to accommodate that person. In Greenland, they're so proud of their language that they will not accommodate you. If you don't know the language, then get yourself an interpreter. In Nunavut, we are still very much wanting to accommodate the white people, yeah.
Can I ask which dialect of Greenlandic you speak?
I speak the Western Greenlandic dialect. I was born in West Greenland.
Okay.
And then when I moved to Canada, before I moved to Canada, I couldn't understand the high Arctic Inuktut, the great Inuit of Greenland. Their dialect, I couldn't understand it until I learned the Canadian Inuit language. Because there was a murder that happened in the Iqaluit area in the 1880s, and they migrated to the high Arctic of Greenland. And they're direct descendants of the Inuit language. So now I could understand them after learning the Inuit language because they spoke the Inuit language. Okay. So I understand. I don't think I could understand Siberia. I haven't been there yet. Yeah. But I performed with a Siberian woman. We had the same outfit. We had the same headbands. And we had the same ceremonies. So if you send me to Siberia, I could be fluent in a year, I think. Or give or take.
And in terms of understanding folk who live along the east coast of Greenland, do you have any difficulties understanding them at all, or is it much you don't find you have many difficulties?
I haven't been to East Greenland, but I listen to their music. Okay. It's not as hard because I already know the Inuit language here. Okay. Because once you have like a spider your feet in more places, it becomes easier to have a balance and better understanding, yeah. I akin it to when I go to France, their language is 500 years also apart. The French came over to Canada, it's been 500 years. Your language developed in a particular way and the European French developed in a particular way, but you can still understand each other, even though one thinks they're better than the other. Same in Canada, because we've been apart 500 years, same thing. But it's, you can understand each other, yeah, especially if you speak slow. Yeah.
It might be a very trivial question, but how do you reconcile the need for Inuit to learn the Inuit language, which connects them to tradition and culture, to the need to educate in a more formal way the Inuit people? And if the Inuit people want to go to, for example, CEGEPs or college or universities and get education, it's almost certain it's not going to be in Inuktitut. So how do you reconcile those two aspects?
Thank you for that question. I was I became the angry Inuk when I lost my language. When I went back to Greenland when I was 18, I couldn't speak with my mother because I lost the language. And once I learned the Inuit language, I found that I had a much better foundation. And I find with the younger generation who doesn't speak the Inuit language, they would so much like to speak the language because it's part of their heritage. I find it's very important. There's a college in Ottawa that's called Nunavut. They produce these amazing students, both in the Inuit language, but also in college and university level in the Western society. And they go back to Nunavut to become leaders, presidents, leaders in other fields. But it's not only the language. You have to understand your history. You have to understand why Inuit are in the situation they're in. You have to understand colonization, the effects of colonization and residential schooling, the dog slaughter, the centralization. You have to understand all these aspects, not just the language, but also once you learn the language and understand it, it gave pride to me. It gave another ammunition to me to function. Because I do a lot of interviews with elders and traditional knowledge. If I cannot communicate with the knowledge keepers, there's that link that is lost. I need to understand, yeah. So I think it's important. Having said that, it's not essential. You could still be an Inuk and use an interpreter or live as an Inuk if you're trying to learn the language or what it is to be an Inuk. Under the Nunavut Land Claims Section 35, Article 35, it states, if you live as an Inuk, it doesn't say specifically about the language. If you're contributing to society, if you're being with Inuit and sitting on the ground eating with the people, if you're considered an Inuk, then you are an Inuk. It is how the community perceives you and how you perceive yourself. It's not a blood content. And I would be hesitant to say you're not an Inuk if you don't speak the language, because you still are Inuit. For my own personal satisfaction, I had to learn it because I wanted to understand. Is that okay? Yeah. I don't want to take away from lack of language to fluency in a language to make you one or the other. In the agreement, it says it's what you perceive yourself and what the community perceives. Yeah.
I'm not talking from Inuktitut, but I work in Nunavut, and I work with youth in towards some issues, teenage, and for them, learning Inuktitut was a healing process. But they don't speak Inuktitut fluently yet, after like a year or something, but it's a step to accept who they are, and they told me that, and I understood there was a process. I was just like helping around on a few projects that I saw on one class or maybe one school in one community. There is 5 kids who get the step for their Inuktitut, and usually those kids are in how do you call that, college John Abbott or different college in Montreal. So they are in university, they speak English, but they're also working to learn Inuktitut. And there is also Inuktitut course in Montreal at Avadak Institute, open for Inuit and non-Inuit. Nice.
Thank you for that, because when you're in a small community and all your teachers are non-Inuit speakers, because we lack teachers, and everything you see on mass media, on television, and everything is like right out of New York, you just get everything fed to you in English. Everything in the radio, except for the Inuktitut languages, are all in English. So everything white and everything south, everything is what you need to learn. And what the parents think, the unilingual Inuit parents think is, yes, that is the future. If my child knows how to speak English, then they have a foot in the mainstream, they have a chance. But what I found with the NS students, as they're learning colonization, assimilation, as they're learning disempowerment, as they're learning how the government of Canada has failed Inuit, and the missionaries as well, how the whole system was put in place to disempower and take all the authority of Inuit. Once they learn, then they want to learn how powerful and how rich and how valuable their Inuit language is, because language is the whole system of the Inuit world. Yeah. Thank you for that statement. At least I speak on my own experience, and because I learned the Inuit language. But my motto was always, when I came back from Denmark, and when people ask me, so what is the word that you want to teach us in the Inuit language, in Greenlandic, in English, in Danish, in French, in Latin? The one word that you need to learn always is the same to you. If somebody says you're an asshole, you just go, the same to you. If somebody says thank you, the same to you. Or you're a kind person, or you're a horrible person. All you need to learn is the same to you. And that's a good start. Yeah. Yes.
Do you think that the Greenlandic movement for independence will help Greenlanders to free themselves from the white supremacy?
That's a very good question. There's a documentary that was made about the Sumi group in the 70s, 80s, amazing group. I don't know if you've seen it. Music revolution. It's music that revolutionized Greenland. And Sumi in the 60s and 70s and 80s made this music that really empowered all of Greenland. And we were all singing all those songs that very much like Martin Luther King and all those other Mandelas and Dalai Lamas. It was exactly what we needed. It was like injection that we needed. Greenland, unfortunately, in my opinion, is being forced to mine and detract. How do you say it? Extract. In order to become an autonomous, self-governing self-nation, a nation by itself, they're having to extract all the riches. But remember, Greenland is just right here, and Nunavut is right here, and guess where we are sharing? We are sharing all the waters right here. And if Greenland is extracting whatever from the underground, and if there was a major spill, and we are hunting culture on the other side of the ocean, right? And the furthest away is 26 kilometers right here at the top, at Etta. Right here, it's so close. Because Inuit are not ready for the extraction yet. Because only 10% of Canada, only 10% of the Arctic is mapped. Are we going to send a ship out there where it's not mapped and start extracting? So, in my opinion, in Nunavut, we are being much more careful because most of our communities are still hunting. We are still living off the land, off the waters. But Greenland is in a rush to become its own country. So it's It's a very difficult game to play, yeah. I don't mind if it's safe, if we can do this safely, because I respect Greenland wanting to be autonomous, but I also respect Inuit way of life, yeah. It's a difficult question. Yes?
How do you deal with new words in Inuktitut? I mean, the question can be applied to any language, to French as well, right? But just in the Inuktitut context.
Excellent question. I don't know whose Kakasawiak this is. This is, it says like a brain. Kakasawiak, yeah. So we have language groups of people that develop new language based on what it does. Inuit language is shape. If somebody was really, really tall, then we would call them tall person. If somebody was really, really white, we would call them white person. Or somebody with this thing is like a brain, so we call it like a brain, yeah. So there's a group that develops new terminology. And then guess what this is? Helicopter. Helicopter. That which has something at the top, yeah. So it's on what it does or what it looks like, yeah.
Sort of leading on from that, how do you deal with establishing a standard for the language if you're trying to promote and increase its usage? Because that must be quite difficult to try and accommodate all the different dialects.
That has been ongoing for decades. Josie Kusugak was in the NTI president, and he's long since passed on. He was trying to standardize the language so that everybody, and it's still being worked on, everybody could be accommodated. Once I become the president of Nunavut, I'll just blanketly just pass it because, like, come on. You can respect each dialectal difference. We have each dialectal. Magdalene Islands, I'm sure you have different words for different things. And Newfoundland and British Columbia, we all have differences, and France, Paris. But we are such a small community, 150,000 in all the whole circumpolar region. Okay, come on, we have very small resources. Let's just get over it. So many people are going to complain, but c'est la vie. Because we are so small, we need all the resources. We don't have any literature in the Inuit language. Greenland has so much because they've been on it for over 100 years. So why don't we just start exchanging all these resources and all this knowledge and stop being so humpy about, I'm so special. That's my take on it. That better not be on the clip. How much time do we have left? I understand I didn't talk much about language. I thought you needed a little bit more background about, not about me, but about Inuit and the language. Yeah.
Another question. Recently there's been talk about making Inuktitut, like it has certain status in Nunavut, but making it official or giving it an official status maybe in Canada. And I was curious about what you thought about if it had a more official status Canada-wide, or if there was more context in which you had to translate, if that would take translators or people who speak the language out of schools and make them translators. Because I think it's a very attractive job to be a translator, but maybe it's taking people who speak the language well and who have lots of knowledge out of schools and draining the number of teachers. I was wondering if you had thoughts, or if you don't, maybe you don't agree.
My daughter does the Hansard in Inuktitut, and there was talk about the Parliament or the Senate, where Charlie Watt, when he was a senator, would be able to speak in his own language, and there would be an interpreter there to interpret what he was saying, and then there would be another translator to translate the Inuktitut manuscript into English. My daughter does this every day. She takes the Inuit language and the English language and she makes it into a legal format. So in Nunavut, it happens all the time. It would be nice if it was recognized at the Senate. And if I became an MP, I would love to be able to speak in my language so that you would have a headpiece and it would be translated. It's out of respect to the First Peoples and out of respect to the Inuit language. Very good question. Unfortunately, we still, even though we have the Inuit language legislation and Inuit language protection, we still have to bring an interpreter if an elder is going to the post office, if an elder is going anywhere where 85% of Inuit live in the same community. It's nice to pass legislation, but if you can't exercise that right, you have no rights. We need to post this a lot more, yeah. It would be good. So I was gonna apply for University of Victoria, just started a new Indigenous program where you could learn Indigenous, where you could take your doctorate, or you could study Indigenous culture and Indigenous language. So I thought, I'm going to apply because I would love to have my PhD in Inuit law. But there's nothing, there's no material. So how do I do this? I would have to do the same thing as all the teachers do in Nunavut, where you develop the whole curriculum by yourself. I would for once like to sit back and just learn, not having to do all the research and extract it from all the sources. We are still not there. So you guys are very fortunate, where you're already established, where you can take courses and where you can take curriculum already developed. I don't have that privilege. So I thought, I'm not gonna do this. It's gonna be, I'm too old. It's gonna take too much work for me. Not that I'm not gonna do it. I still work with the law program. We have collected so much from our elder. Our elder passed away. So I have all the manuscripts, all the chapters that I'll be writing in syllabics, in Roman orthography, and then I'll be translating all this material so that our students can have all this material. It's not just a word. Just literal translation is not going to work because the elder is taking this material from ancient times. And what does this word mean in today's context so that our students can understand it? What does this word mean? Language is forever flowing, forever changing, and especially the language and terms that the elders are using. I could take one example. Guilty. That only came when white people and police officers came to the Inuit world. We didn't have the word guilty, or somebody who should be basiyaksak. I have to think about the meaning. To be, you are to be blamed, or you did this crime. See, I can't even explain it. When Elizabeth Karidak's mom had to kill the man who had just shot her husband, who was out at the fishing hole because Canadian government had taken them from their community and placed them in the desert without food, without nothing. They were starving. Nothing. The father of the child who had just passed away of starvation lost it. He went to Elizabeth's dad and shot him from behind. He was trying to fish, trying to feed the family. Then the murderer just went into their tent and attacked the mother, Elizabeth's mom. Elizabeth was just a baby. After shooting her husband, she told her son to bring her a knife. And she killed the murderer because he was trying to save her children. They were all starving. Why did I write it? Somebody should be guilty, and that term, when the judge said, after all this time, when the judge said to Elizabeth's mom, that's the, it could be qillaq, the way white people spell it, but it's a documentary that you should watch. The legal interpreter couldn't interpret. You are not guilty. Like all those concepts that we've had to learn, because our system is not a penal system. We are not based on Christianity where there shall not. Our system is on reconciliation, where we always try to reconcile, because every member of the community is so important. You know why? A seal has many breathing holes. I can't survive on my own. I can't man that breathing hole by myself. I need every member in my community to man all the breathing holes so that the seal has no choice but to come up. Because there's a person. We all need each other. And this is why this form of language and system is so foreign to us and has been so foreign, but we are adapting it. Younger generation is starting to become and adapting the Western way of being too much and too fast. Yeah. I could come back tomorrow and we could hold another session, because you will possibly not learn all this. It's just giving you a different way of thinking, a different way of seeing the world, I hope, once you get through this, yeah.